Pope Francis's policy of appeasing the demonic communist dragon is backfiring big time. From September 1st, the Chinese Communist Party will tighten the screws even further on Christians in China. But the Chinese bishops want to bend backwards even more. Joining us here is our Rome correspondent, Jules Gomes. Jules, you've just been sent terrible news from China. Can you tell our viewers how Christians are going to be subjected to even more persecution in just a couple of months?
Rodney, if you think Chinese Christians are suffering under communist tyranny, you ain't seen nothing yet. Because this morning I received a document from a source in China with 76 articles. It's a 22-page document. I had it translated into English. And my goodness, it seems rather bureaucratic at first glance, but every article has been crafted with a view to persecuting, pressurizing, and stamping Christians into the ground, under the jackboot of the Communist Party even more. For example, pastors are ordered to write sermons with a view to promoting communist propaganda. All churches will have to have study groups. And we're not talking about Bible study groups. We are talking about study groups in which a significant amount of time will have to be given to studying Chinese Communist Party documents. There are numerous articles that talk about how people attending churches, leaders particularly, will have to have very, very specific documentation. We know that everybody who attends a Chinese church, not the underground ones, of course, is identified by facial recognition software, and this is absolutely Kafkaesque. But wait until September and then see what happens.
Now, how have the Chinese bishops responded to this? Because obviously this is an affront to the Catholic Church.
You're not going to believe this. The Chinese bishops met and have called for an even further sinicization of Catholicism in seminaries. So not just in churches, but, the Chinese Communist Party says jump, and the bishops have said, how high do you want us to jump? And so they're going to revamp and revise a significant amount of the seminary curriculum so that seminarians will now be even further indoctrinated with communist ideology.
Wow, that's horrific. Can you explain what the Chinese Communist Party government means by sinicization of Christianity? Could this just be a form of enculturation?
Well, if it was just a form of enculturation, it would be completely fine, because we know that some of the earliest Jesuit missionaries to China adopted enculturation, and, they used it to evangelize the Chinese. But this has nothing to do with enculturation. Let me give you an example, some examples of sinicization. For example, pastors, priests are asked to sinicize the Bible, which means that not all parts of the Bible should be introduced to Chinese Christians, only those in harmony with core communist values. So, for example, they rewrite the story of Jesus forgiving an adulterous woman, and they say that the story is rewritten to show that Jesus actually killed this woman in order to demonstrate that the laws of the state should always be respected. Hymns should also be sinicized by eliminating all hymns that have Western or non-Chinese composers or authors for their lyrics, which means almost all traditional hymns will disappear. Remember, Chinese loved singing the traditional Western hymns, and thousands of these hymns are translated into Chinese, and many of the Chinese Christians I know these hymns by heart. These hymns will also need to be replaced with songs advancing communist culture. So one example is, let me quote, "China is beautiful, China is great. The sons and daughters of China love China. Bless China, O Lord." Already what we have seen happening is that icons of Jesus are being replaced with portraits of a benevolent Uncle Xi. And public courses in the seminary, we are told, should occupy not less than 30% of the total curriculum. And these public courses should include ideological and political theory and Chinese culture, with the goal of an in-depth study of Xi Jinping's thought for the new era of socialism with Chinese characteristics.
It's interesting how the Chinese put such a stress on Chinese culture, and of course by culture they mean worship of the government, but that culture has been, Western culture has been denigrated and tossed out in the US and Europe. It's an interesting parallel there. In the last 2 months, the government launched a massive crackdown on Christians. Are there any specific incidents that you have for us?
I can think of at least 3. Yesterday, the Hong Kong government, the police arrested 10 people, one of them a very prominent Catholic by the name of Bobo Yip. Now, these 10 people who have been detained belong to what is called the 612 Humanitarian Relief Fund, an organization with which Cardinal Joseph Zen has also been associated with, and he and his associates were arrested for supporting this organization. But and by the way, these 10 people who are arrested could be sentenced to life imprisonment. Pastor Park Gwanje was arrested last month, or earlier this month actually, and he was detained for 15 days. No reason given, and crosses all around his church and elsewhere have been demolished. But even worse, in June, 900 people from the Church of Almighty God were arrested, and one of them died after 3 days in police custody. Some of these people have been released, some of them have not.
So what this really seems to indicate is that the Vatican-China secret deal that was passed, a few years ago, is basically completely toothless. As Cardinal Zen and other people commented at the time that they were talking about this, the church gives everything and the communist government gives nothing. Is the Vatican prepared to renegotiate? Do they even know what they're doing?
The Vatican, to use that metaphor, feeding the crocodile, appeasing the crocodile in the hope that the crocodile will eat you last. This seems to have been the policy of the Vatican. And now the Church, faithful Catholics who have ironically suffered because they have remained loyal to Rome, are now being told, we don't need your loyalty. They've been thrown under the bus, and they've been told, come over ground and be loyal to your masters, your commie masters in China. Now, the Vatican secret accord with China has failed totally, we know, not just in terms of the fact that persecution has escalated monumentally, and this is one area, perhaps the only area, where even left-wing liberals, progressives have hammered Pope Francis and said, gosh, what on earth are you doing, feeding Christians to the commie wolves? And Pope Francis has not responded to them, but he's continued to appease and capitulate to the communists. We know, of course, the Vatican's accord has not failed, just failed in terms of the repercussions on Christians, but also twice in the last 3 months, the Chinese have snubbed Pope Francis and Cardinal Parolin, hugely, by just defying the accord, which is supposed to, mainly to do with the appointment of bishops, and just gone ahead and appointed whoever they wanted. And rather sheepishly, Pope Francis has had to just simply rubber stamp the bishop China has appointed.
Yeah, well, it just goes to show that you simply can't dialogue with Satan. And attempting to do that with the Chinese communists is exactly that, trying to dialogue with demons. Let's keep these faithful Catholic Chinese folks in our prayers. Thank you so much, Jules.
Thank you, Rodney.